This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. My email address, jason@sportspectrum.com, jason@sportspectrum.com. And we are presented today by Water Mission. They are a nonprofit Christian engineering ministry that fights the global water crisis with safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions in developing countries and disaster areas. They're doing great work right now fighting the global water crisis. You can team up with Water Mission. You can pray for them and learn more by going to their website, watermission.org, watermission.org. We're also presented today by Compassion International, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. And this is a chance for you to team up with pro athletes for children in poverty. So you can check out their website, compassion.com/teamup, compassion.com/teamup, and donate and help release a child from poverty today. Very excited to welcome to Sports Spectrum's podcast, Mike Metcalf. He is a NASCAR Pit Crew coach. He's been there doing that job since 2006. He's a former football player, played college ball at Appalachian State. And he, like I said, began his motorsports career in 2006. He began and started coaching pit crews in 2012. And presently, he's one of the head coaches for the Chip Ganassi Racing Pit Crew and fuel man for the number 42 team. And Mike's also got a brand new book out. He is the co-author of 12-Second Culture with Sean Pete and Stephen Copeland. And it's a great book on leadership, culture, and how you have to be diverse, efficient, have a great culture, and be kind. That stands for DEC. If you're doing that, diversity, efficiency, culture, and kindness. Mike Metcalf talks about all that and more here today on Sports Spectrum. Great conversation. Take a listen. Mike Metcalf, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I'm excited to be here.
This is good. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Your journey and your job, first of all, your job as a NASCAR Pit Crew coach is fascinating to me. Let's start there. Why don't you share with our audience a little bit about yourself, but really what that role as NASCAR Pit Crew coach entails and what that entails.
Yeah, so we kind of function like a football program almost. We got a lot of football, former, collegiate, even 3 NFL guys. So we race on the weekends. Typically Sunday is when a cup race is. Monday is yoga, soft tissue recovery, drills, individual stuff. Tuesday is film review. Tuesday is also a practice day. Wednesday is a big practice competition day, a big workout. We're all together practicing, working out. Thursday is kind of a polished, lighter day, and then typically off Friday, and then out again Saturday, Sunday, and we do that for about 36 weeks out of the year.
Okay, so a couple questions there. First of all, you have to be in shape to do this because you're talking about a lot of workouts and not just, coming to work and do your job and go home, right?
Correct, yeah. So the gas can, I'm also a fueler, so I'm a player coach. Sean is just strictly on the coaching training side. And then on that side, we've got some admin work, we've got recruiting, we've got film, we've got just looking at choreography, always and analyzing our talent, depth chart, things like that. It functions a lot more like a sport than the actual sport of racing does. So the gas cans are about 100 pounds. The tires about 65 pounds. So a tire carrier is jumping out in front of a moving race car with 2 65-pound tires in each arm. The jack's about 30 pounds and the car is 3,200 pounds. He's got to get that car up in one stroke of the jack. He's got to nail it. There's a plate about the size of your little mouse pad on your MacBook that's got to find the bottom of a bolt under a moving race car to hit it to lift the car up. You miss that bolt, it's not good. And so we jokingly, it's in the book, it's chapter 2, it's called, we refer to ourselves as the Department of Unrealistic Expectations because they expect us to do all of that, 18 gallons of gas, 4 new tires in 12 seconds, and they expect it to be perfect every time.
Jeez. I mean, it's basically asking you to play God in some ways, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's really hard.
It is, and we always talk, we're on the edge of what's humanly possible, and I think the next chapter in there is fail quickly. And it's, we know failure's coming. We know we're going to have bad days. We know we're going to have to navigate change. We know we're going to have expectations placed upon us where we're doing a lot of adjustments to our car, and maybe the people we're competing against are doing none, but they're still expecting that time to be there. About 2 years ago, we were in Darlington on the 42 car, and we were out front all day. Best pit stops. We set the standard on the field. If we came in second, we went out first. If we came in first, we stayed first. The very last pit stop, the 2 car, their pit stop was 0.4 faster than ours. And Sean and I mean, it seemed like our jobs were on the line. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I was like, really? 0.4? That's the margin, but that's the margin that we deal with, where every tenth of a second matters. And so there were people that wouldn't talk to us, blamed us for losing the race. And, you know, we would have had a better season if we would have had a better pit stop. And it's just, so it's a tight world. It's a stressful world. But we try to have some fun with it and try to bring a culture that can support, you know, that kind of pressure.
You mentioned yoga on Mondays. I thought that was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Is that just an important part of kind of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think more mentally than anything, it's just an hour, just because, you know, some of these weeks, even if you win, it's so fleeting. It's, you know, all right, we won the race, but we should have done this better. Or if you had a bad race, you know, it's just good to kind of reset and leave it and then kind of move forward. And so a little bit of a mental reset and then a physical just kind of helps with balance. I'm a fueler. The gas can's always on my right side, so it creates asymmetry. And so just for beyond the racing careers, whenever we retire, I want to just play with our kids so we're not walking, you know, hunched over to one side. So it's just it's restorative and it's kind of a reset for us.
Now, you played football. You were at Appalachian State, right? So why football players kind of coming into this world? Why is that such a match in some ways for a few guys?
The flow of the week where it's competing on weekends and intensive training during the week involving practice and film and training. Used to getting yelled at is a very important one.
Sure.
Crew chiefs and drivers don't hold their tongue very much on the radio. And then just availability. Football teams are massive, right? You got most college team is having 100 people, and we're in a good spot here in Charlotte, and where a lot of teams are located, where we got access to a lot of good, you know, ACC, SEC. I went to Appalachian State, you know, Sun Belt, you know, kind of teams, and these are all kids, you know, a lot of them that find their way in, myself included. We're walk-ons, and you know, pretty sharp work ethics, and people can vouch for them, and just looking for ways to extend their playing career.
Yeah. How do you get into NASCAR? Like, take us back to the opportunity, the moment where you're saying, okay, I think I want to get this chance and try it.
Yeah. So I can say this on Sports Spectrum because it's faith-based, but I finished school in 2004, was training in 2005. Had a workout in Indianapolis for a bunch of scouts, and in training with that, the guy that I got hooked up with was a former UNC Chapel Hill trainer, and he moved to Charlotte to train some of the Panther guys. And I think he had Steve Smith and Julius Peppers, some of these guys as clients, and then little me, right? I'm like nowhere near these guys' level of athleticism, but you know, I worked hard. So I was trying to train, and he ended up picking up Casey Kane, who was a race car driver at the time, as a client. And then I think Casey introduced Ben to Ray Evernham, who owned this team, Ray Evernham Motorsports. And then Ray was one of the guys who was, and it was a newer team. He had been at Hendrick Motorsports. He was instrumental with the Rainbow Warriors. Those were his pit crew. So that was kind of like the original athletes that came to pit road. It usually was just the mechanics, you, and you're going to go pit the race car this weekend. There's no real distinction. Just anybody could do it. But yeah. Ray was one of the guys that said, hey, we need to get athletes here. Maybe they'll drop these times. And so when he started his own team, that was one of his initiatives. Ben came along. Ben brought me in for a workout. I did a 40. I did 5, 10, 5. I did all these things that I was like, man, this is the stuff I do for football. This is kind of neat, right? That was August of 2005. And they said they wanted to hire me. And come January 1, they still had not hired me. And at this point, I was thinking about playing in an indoor league, arena, or overseas. And I ended up hearing a sermon And the pastor was saying, sometimes God has things in store for you, but you just got to go kick the door open. Like, you're at the door and the door is cracked, but it's up to you to push it open. And
Yes.
so I was like, well, let's try this out. So I just showed up to work the next day. And they were like, is anybody expecting Mike Metcalf? They're like, nope. I was like, I know you're not expecting me. You said you wanted to hire me for the last 4 months, and here I am. So not where do I start, but not when do I start. I'm starting today, but where do I start?
Nice.
And so they called a few guys around in the different shop. There's 3 different buildings, a massive campus. A lot of these motorsports teams are huge facilities, and they called one of the parts room guys and said, hey, do you need help? And they were like, oh my God, yes, we need help yesterday. And so they're like, do you know anything about car parts? And I was like, nope, but I'll learn. And so I stayed late that day. I worked late for a long time just to try to learn. And that was my end. So I started as a part-time parts room clerk in motorsports. And then I would spend the second half of the day just with the race car, watching the guys practice, learning the different positions, things like that. And so my route in the sports very different. Nowadays, you kind of have to have an athletic background, come from some type of team, or have a strength and conditioning coach that can vouch for you. There's a couple. Hendrick has been doing some pretty big combines. There's NASCAR has a diversity program that's done some big combines and recruited a lot of people. So now it's kind of more of what you would expect, where there's recruiting. But back when I started 15 years ago, you just kind of had to get lucky.
That's a great story. I love that. Thanks for sharing it. Mike Metcalf is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. So you write this book. It's called The 12-Second Culture. You're a co-author with Sean P. We mentioned Stephen Copeland as well, who is a writer who helped you guys with the book. He also helped me with my 2 books and is a fantastic writer. Let's talk about the book, The 12-Second Culture. Why did you write it? What's it about? And why should people go get a copy?
Yeah, so a couple reasons. Kind of big picture, people, as we interact with fans and sponsors at the racetrack, we'd always meet, business owners, leaders of companies that were sponsors or guests. And, they'd see the pit crew working and say, man, I wish I could get my team to function like a pit crew. And then Sean and I had started reading articles about how a lot of emergency workers and hospitals were reaching out to F1 teams in Europe to just figure out, all right, how do you guys think? And maybe that can help us streamline our process. And if we can cut a minute or 2 from ambulance to operating table, maybe we can save more lives. And so we're like, man, we should write a book, like, if you want to know how a pit crew works, here, we have something for you. So we kind of had the idea there. But then also, we started just kind of researching a little bit. And in the book, we have a few of these, but, heart attacks are highest in the U.S. on Monday mornings. And I know someone that's happened to. On a weekend, having fun, doing what you want to do around people you enjoy. And then on the way into work Monday, that stress just comes back onto you, that boss that you don't like, the demands that department of unrealistic expectations. We're all, so many people can relate to that. Yeah. Whether that's a teacher in an underfunded, school system, or, a salesperson that's been giving nothing, but they're just beating on them to demand. And then just an overall erosion of trust when it comes to leadership. And so we've been able to assemble a team. When we got to Ganassi Racing, those crews were outside of the top 20. And in about 3 years, we were inside the top 5 with several moments of racing where they were like, man, nobody can touch these Ganassi Racing pit crews. And so we just wanted to tell that story. We didn't do it with money. It wasn't talent. It's not resources. It's all about how you treat people. And so we were asked to speak at the NFL Combine in 2017. So kind of back to Indy, it was kind of a good moment for me, because that's going to Indy was how it got me here. But then going to Indy again to speak at the Combine, we just threw a story together. Didn't think it was great. Thought we bombed the speech, but we ended up getting good feedback, and we realized our core pillars were diversity, efficiency, culture, and kindness, and those were the pillars that help us turn that company around. And And if we could do it in NASCAR and build a diverse team in NASCAR, then anybody can do it. And so we just want to tell our story and just give people kind of wings as they try to maybe mobilize with diversity conversations or try to build a healthier culture. And then we just end, obviously, with kindness. It's so important that we are kind to the people we work with, but to ourselves. I think a lot of people are like, I don't understand why people can't treat each other better. And it's like, well, we don't know how to treat ourselves.
Yeah.
And then if we can start there, we can do some self-care and some healing, then maybe that'll overflow into each other. So
that's great.
That's the core of what 12-second culture is about. A ton of racing stories, a lot on culture, diversity, efficiency, but there's a theme of kindness that's really important.
We'll get back to our conversation with Mike Metcalf, the NASCAR Pit Crew coach, in just a second. But I want to tell you a little bit more about our friends at Water Mission. Right now, they're working to stop the global spread of COVID-19 in the pandemic by providing urgently needed safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions to refugee settlements and other vulnerable communities. Water Mission does amazing work. And right now, motivated by its faith in Jesus Christ, they are on the front lines trying to help stop this global spread. We're talking about safe water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions. Do you know that 4.4 billion people lack access to adequate sanitation and 2.1 billion people lack access to safe water? It's insane. Women spend 200 million hours every day just walking for water. Think about it. You get up, you go downstairs, you turn on the faucet, you get a drink of water. Well, there's 4.4 billion people who lack access to sanitation and 2.1 billion that lack access to safe water. And this is a chance for you to join Water Mission, pray with them, and fight the global water crisis. You can donate by going to watermission.org and partner with them, watermission.org. We're also presented today by Compassion International, and we're talking about COVID-19 running rampant across the world, and it's left nearly 70,000 children without a sponsor. You see, Compassion normally has these events like concerts and other large venues, and many of the children that are sponsored take place in those events, and they're all wiped out right now. And that is the capacity, 70,000 children. That's the capacity of an average NFL stadium. So the world is in the grips of COVID-19. It's led to sickness. Parents can't work. Food is scarce. And this is the time for you to team up with pro athletes and Compassion to help fill the stadium. The critical next 12 months, man, it is critical right now for these children. It could be bad. And you can make that difference by donating and helping children, releasing them from poverty, and help fill a seat toward a year of needed funding. Check out compassion.com/teamup. Compassion.com/teamup and join the fight with Compassion to release children from poverty today. Now back to our conversation with Mike Metcalf from NASCAR. He's a pit crew coach there, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Again, the book is called The 12-Second Culture. I want to tell a few stories if you could. Give us a story that stands out, an experience on the track, stressful situation, and something that's memorable that our listening audience might really be in tune to.
New Hampshire, this might have been about 7-8 years ago. 6 or 7 years ago. A car comes in, it's an affiliate car, so it's unsponsored, and there's a potential sponsor there at the racetrack. And the car, it's a flat track. You use a lot of brakes. The car comes in, and the brakes, it's a rolling fire. And so, so the guys go take the tire off, and they're saying they're about to put the new one on. They're like, "There's no way. We got to get this fire out, or this car is going to burn to the ground." Well, this crew chief is so focused on trying to get the car back out to get, a better finish, to try to say, "Hey, we're a good team, give us millions of dollars," that he's completely ignoring the fact that these guys are saying, "This car is burning. We can't go back out." So he's telling them, "Put the tire back on, you blankety blanks," calling them morons. Screaming at them. And they're like, "Okay, cool." Tire goes back on, and we always like to say, I'm not a scientist, but I understand that when you do introduce oxygen to open flames, what happens is usually that the fire grows. And so we were in it for maybe $250 pair of brake pads that could have probably easily been swapped out. But instead it burned a $200,000 race car to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And it's it's a story of managing your emotions. We talk about so many times, emotions are a really good consultant, but not a good boss, and so a lot of times we make decisions. I've never been able to forget that, just seeing that car burning,
I can't imagine.
and then just trusting and listening to people around you. It's so important. In racing, we have spotters, people up on the stand that can see what's happening, a view that you can't see. It's so important to have spotters in our lives. And I think a lot of us have friends and family, but are we listening to them when they give us critical feedback, when they tell us, hey, maybe you should try this instead of that? And so, there's so much that I've just learned from just random racing related stories.
Mm-hmm. No, I know you could probably write 10 books, right? With all the stories you have.
I think we're just hopefully, if we sell a few more, I think we'll start writing again soon, and we could probably, I think we can get a good volume going.
I love it. I love it. The book again is called The 12-Second Culture, with Sean Pete, Stephen Copeland, and our guest Mike Metcalf, NASCAR Pit Crew coach, joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. We are the intersection of sports and faith, so let's intersect the conversation with faith and just learn a little bit about your journey with God, your faith walk, and where that took shape.
Yeah, my parents came to faith, I think, when they were just out of college, and so I kind of grew up in it in the sense of they were new to it. And so it wasn't like a lot of amazing history passed down to me. It was like, all right, this is our new normal as a family. And so it was kind of experimental in a lot of regards as far as what faith is. And I would say a lot of that was just me piggybacking them up until probably, I would say earlier on in life, it was kind of more fear-based for me, kind of like, all right, I'm going to do this because my parents said if I didn't, I'll go to hell. I'm not really sure what that is, but it sounds really hot, and I don't like too hot. So
there's fire again, right?
Yeah. So I'll go the other route. But I would say by the time I was really getting into sports, playing football, I tore my shoulder up pretty bad in my junior year, and spent, for the first time in my life, just a month pretty much at home alone and rehabbing and trying to rehabilitate and heal. And I would say those were really low moments for me. And for whatever reason, in that is when I actually felt closest to God and really realized, man, there is actually something to this, and it's talking about, even in the valley, David in Psalm 23, in the valley and darkness, God's going to be with me. And so it kind of like that was the moment I remember. It's about 16 where I was like, okay, I'm in. This is more than just going and checking a box on Sunday and reading some stuff and saying a couple prayers so you don't go to the hell place,
Yep.
And so yeah, man, it's and ever since then it's been just a continuous, I got 2 kids. I travel a lot for sports. I'm not really churched very well just because we race on the weekends. I've been in college or racing pretty much my whole life, but just those few moments in the morning just to spend time, just to say how thankful I am to God for what, I was a finance and banking major. I don't foresee how my life would have been enjoyable at all if I was in a desk, doing accounting transactions all day. Just wouldn't have worked for me. Sure. And so this door that he cracked open, for this racing thing, I'm very grateful for that. And so hopefully, because my parents brought me up with that, hopefully I can do the same for my kid.
So do they have chaplains, I believe, and opportunities for people to stay connected, maybe more for the drivers, but for the crew too?
No, they're MRO, Motor Racing Outreach, and they actually do a really good job. It's just that depending on the racetrack and the schedule, a lot of times there's team meetings or sponsor stuff you have to do. So I don't always get to go, but I try to when I can. And those guys do a great job. They'll just come up and down pit road. Hey, I didn't see you today. Can we pray for a second? And even just that one little 30-second interaction, as the race is going, it's loud, and you're just standing there huddled up. It matters and it's important. And so, definitely thankful for those guys, and they do a great job.
As we wind down, I'm just curious what this year has been like for you. There's so much that's happened in 2020, and the scope could encompass 5 more books and 20 more podcasts that we could talk about what's happened in 2020. Yeah. But from a job perspective, with COVID-19 and NASCAR starting back up, what was that like for you? Maybe not just in your role, but just some overarching thoughts on dealing with the pandemic and quarantining, and then all the social justice that's taking place. Just some thoughts there.
Yeah, it's, I think a lot of people, I'm seeing so many posts about they can't wait to get out of 2020, or if 2020 was a computer, can we hit the restart button, and, all this stuff. And I honestly think that we'll look back on this year with fondness. From the quarantine and the pause, I think, made us slow down and look at our lives in a way that we've never really done. I mean, I've been on the road so much, and it was cool for a few weeks to be at home. And then after a while, I was like, man, I kind of feel out of place. I've not really sown seeds with my wife and my kid the way that I should. 2020 is perfect vision. And I think there's like a clarity piece to it that I think God's allowing us. And so with the pandemic, taking better care of our bodies, right? The Bible is very clear about, mourn with those who mourn, and looking after those who are, have suffered injustice, and being the hands and heart of the Father. And so I think you're getting a really clear picture of who's doing that, who's not, and ways that we can do it and join in and be more supportive of each other. And so the 42 car group I'm on, Kyle Larson was fired during the quarantine for a racial slur. And I've been his gas man. A black guy has been his gas man for the last 4 years. And so that was, I wasn't so much mad at him. I know Kyle. Kyle's not a racist, but he's, young. And, when you some of these athletes and like a Jerry Falwell Jr., you get to a point where you just don't think you can do whatever you want. And so, and I honestly think that's God's mercy that allows us at sometimes to deal with some things that may be hurtful or seem harmful to us, but there's a growth that's there. There's a redirection that's there. And I think that's actually love. And so as we restarted with the new driver, it was disappointing because it takes a lot to win a race or to championship. You got to have the driver, the pit crew, but the manufacturer's got to be on point with the aerodynamics of the car. The motors have to be good. We kind of finally put together what I thought would be a championship year for the 42, and to see it go down that way after George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and all these things have happened, I was just like, it's just the worst news that I could get. But to see NASCAR come back behind that and have moments of listening and really stand behind Bubba Wallace, I think if the Kyle Larson thing hadn't happened, because when that happened, they got a diversity crisis management task force assembled. They decided, it gave NASCAR, because a lot of people were like, oh yeah, it's NASCAR. Of course, that's words that they use. And they were like, really? We thought we were moving past that. And it actually gave the sport a real good microscope and audit. And so to come back on the other side, I'm on national TV crying at the moment of listening, because it just touched me, because I never would have imagined in 15 years that kind of thing would happen. And so super proud of the sport. I think that there's a lot of work still to do, but I've been able to be on Inside Scoop. I was on a call with NASCAR's communications and PR team a couple of weeks ago, and just talking about some of my experiences in racing, and talking about race. To me, you can't talk about race without talking about grace. Just put a little G in front of that word, and if we can have some grace for each other, grace for our past, grace for our ignorance, our apathy, people that have hurt us, then we can start moving forward.
Yeah, that's really well said. He is Mike Metcalf, NASCAR Pit Crew coach and a co-author, again, of the new book, 12-Second Culture. People need to go and get their copy right now. You can get it at 12secondculturebook.com, and also check out deckleadership.com. The Deck Leadership is the company that you are a part of. You talked about Deck being diversity, efficiency, culture, and kindness, right? Right, Mike?
Yeah, that's it, man. You nailed it.
I love it. Mike Metcalf, thanks so much for being here, my friend. This has been great. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And many thanks to Mike Metcalf for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Get the new book, 12-Second Culture. It's available now. And Mike Metcalf, great guy, Really smart guy, and glad that he shared a little bit about his journey as a NASCAR Pit Crew coach and all that's been going on as a member of Chip Ganassi's Racing Pit Crew team. Thanks to Mike for joining us here today and sharing about the 12-second culture on Sports Spectrum. We also want to thank our partners, Water Mission. You can partner with them in fighting the global water crisis by going to watermission.org. And we also have Compassion International as a great partner too. And you can check out their website, compassion.com/teamup, and join with Compassion and pro athletes to release children from poverty in Jesus' name. We also want to direct you to our website, sportspectrum.com. That's the home base for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. Articles all day long on the intersection of sports and faith. We have a daily devotional each morning to start your day right with the Lord. And then every single podcast is available over at sportspectrum.com. And lastly, whatever app that you're listening to this podcast on, do us a favor, click that subscribe button so you never miss an episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast. Over 500 plus interviews, and they're all available on demand right now by clicking subscribe. You can go back and listen to every single episode whenever you'd like here with the Sports Spectrum podcast. We appreciate you for tuning in today. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day.